Hello and welcome to another episode of Talking with Friends. Today I'm super excited to be welcoming Kelly, aka the Middle Page, back to the podcast and welcoming Kaia K for her first time. So, Kelly, you've been with us a few times now for both Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. I think that people know that you're just going to be a regular.
Name the day and I will be there for you, Andy. Just let me know when to show up and I will.
Perfect. And we will hold you to that. Kelly, do you want to remind people where they can find you?
Yeah, on Instagram, it's the middle page. And TikTok, it's the middle dot page. And yeah, I just do posts about Tolkien, about books, and do some Tolkien studies and deep dives and that sort of thing.
Amazing. And Kaia, welcome. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. I feel like, I don't know, what's our story? Like, we started following each other earlier this year, and then I feel like through the trivia stuff through Voices of Arda, we got to know each other a little bit more.
Yeah. I think it was mainly around when the trivia stuff started, because that's when everyone started following each other, and then we all started, becoming friends.
Yeah, besties. So Kaia, do you want to let us know, hey, where can we follow you, what you're all about, and then if you want, you can let us know, like, what's your Tolkien / Lord of the Rings story? Like, how'd you get there?
Well, I'm mainly on TikTok and Instagram. TikTok, it's Kaia KS, and then Instagram, it's Kaia K with 2 Y's. And then now on YouTube, the Voices of Arda is doing that giant collab page, so I'm a part of that. So you can just find that with Voices of Arda.
I love it.
My content is kind of a mix between lore and memes. Like a lot of the memes that I post on Threads, and then I just screenshot it, posted to Instagram, and then the video memes on TikTok, obviously, along with my lore videos.
It's a perfect blend of like funny and like learning more about the world, which I think is always appreciated when you can be a little silly goose with it.
Yeah, I like doing the funny stuff in between like the serious lore drops, because then you don't want to get too boring. You don't want to sound like a library.
Yeah. It's like, depending on what you're talking about, it can kind of get heavy or a little bit, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
This is Tolkien we're talking about.
There was a video I was making just to be like, a little silly goose, a little funny. It was the one like, who's your favorite Tolkien elf? And then it gets to the end, it's like Eowl. It's like, oh. And then I made a whole video on Eowl. It went from funny to call the cops.
Literally, though. One time I was talking to MC from That's What I'm Talking About podcast, and we were talking about the Silmarillion, and my chapter was Miglin, and I was just like, we got some bad dudes up in here.
Yeah. Like, Tolkien can write them really, really good, but when he writes them bad, he
goes for it, man.
He writes them with mommy issues and daddy issues, all the issues. They need therapy.
Yeah. If there was a therapist in Middle-earth, there would be endless business.
Endless. Makes so much money.
And if anybody is wondering where Callie is, speaking of Voices of Arda, they have stolen her from us, as they are also talking about Rings of Power. Which is like, fine, I guess.
Fine, they can have her today.
Yeah, God. Just this one time. But today we are going to be diving into the first 3 episodes of season 2 of Amazon's Rings of Power. And I know that oh my gosh, no, this was like 2 summers ago. We had started talking about the trailers and stuff, but then I kind of moved our conversations about it more to like LinkedIn. Wow, I'm in work mode. But we were doing TikTok lives, and I think we were calling them like Ladies of TikTok, or I can't remember but we were doing like talking about the episodes on Saturdays more or less. But we didn't really bring it to Tolkien with Friends because at the time we were still pretty much a baby podcast, and we were still releasing all of our Lord of the Rings like chapter by chapter stuff, and it felt weird to break that cadence. So we just left it out for now, but I think it kind of works out because now we've had like a while to sit with season 1, and also with like, I talked about this last time, but like with The Hobbit, and it kind of was like uninspiring for me towards the end. But, you know, I feel like one thing that I have really enjoyed watching in the lead up to this season of Rings of Power is, whereas before there was a lot of angry comments, and I know they're still out there, and I know that they're still like flooding certain people's comment sections, but I have seen a resurgence in interest in the show, and a lot more new people being like, hey, I'm reading Lord of the Rings for the first time, and I'm excited to see Rings of Power, you know, or doing watches of season 1, getting ready for season 2, and I just think that it felt like a good time to talk about it. So we are recording this on August 29th, so the first 3 episodes have dropped, but knowing everybody's schedules and such are weird, we're going to try to do as spoiler free as possible and just kind of do like a vibe check on where the first 3 episodes have left us, like how we're feeling and where we see the season going. I also do want to mention that I personally had a weird relationship with Rings of Power season 1. I feel like I had a lot of fun, like, deep diving with my girls about it on the weekends and, like, chatting it through, but there were a lot of, like, I don't even want to say storylines, but the way they went about crafting some of the storylines that didn't really sit well with me. And I think there are still some things that are, like, but then at the same time, like, Bear McCreary's music always slaps. Like, some of the, like, I have really fallen in love with a lot of the characters on the show. It was just kind of some of the ways that they were either getting around not having rights to certain things, or the way that they had changed some of the things that were in the appendices that I wasn't quite gelling with.
It's hard too because it's like it's planned out for 5 years, and the
Right.
first season there's so many things that they placed the groundwork for that we just didn't know. And we were especially like people who know more of the text and the lore, were expecting something a little bit different, and it just doesn't come into fruition until like now and a little bit later on. So it's hard.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, the first season, I feel like, I know that there are some, like, shows where you buy into it immediately, but I feel like it's always hard when you're coming across like a property or an IP that's so beloved and you sit with for so long. And so I was just kind of dealing with my own, just like, how do I want to approach this? You know, how do I want to think about it going into it? Because I don't think, whereas before, most of our adaptations have really been like, they take a whole book and turn it into something for film or radio play or whatever. But for this, they're really taking like the appendices and bits and pieces that maybe the Tolkien estate gives them, things buried within the Lord of the Rings, because Lord of the Rings loves to make references to stuff from like the first and second age, but without going into them too much. So it's like a totally different approach to an adaptation. So I'm kind of thinking about this season as more of like an inspired by, and they're kind of taking, you know, different pieces and kind of crafting their own thing and just trying to enjoy it for what it is, because it really is a beautiful show with like incredible music, incredible actors. You can see that there's a lot of heart and passion put into the work behind it. And so, which is one of the things that I always have loved about the making of the Peter Jackson movies, like more than sticking to the whatever I thought the book felt like, just like seeing the behind the scenes of those things has always been such a like a gem that we don't really get anymore. But every time I see the cast or crew of Rings of Power, I'm always like, oh, you guys get it, So I love that, and so it's fun to dive back in for season 2. Kaia, tell us how you were feeling at the end of Rings of Power season 1, and then how you're feeling going into before you started hitting play on season 2.
So at the end of season one, it was a mix because I liked it, but I was also frustrated because I'm also one of those people where like, if someone's making a movie of my favorite book, then I get very disappointed whenever something happens and I'm like, that's not how that happens. But then when I'm able to like separate it from the text itself, it's a good show. Like if you go into it not knowing the actual lore, it's good. But like after it ended, it took me a while to be able to re-watch it again because I knew that watching it would frustrate me
Yes,
and it would just
same.
I was worried that I wouldn't like it as much as I would the first time. But then
Fair.
when I rewatched it the second time and then the third time, I was like, okay, yeah, I could get into it. I fell more in love with the way they made Galadriel, and I liked Celebrimbor, even though people said they didn't like him. I
I feel like that's not fair because he was barely in it first season.
Yeah, I know how a lot of people didn't like how they basically gave Celebrimbor's like almost story beginning of his storyline to trusting Anatar to Galadriel with trusting Halbrand, but I don't know. I kind of liked it. I kind of very much understand how they were frustrated about it, but understanding where they're coming from with basically having to scrape the rest of the peanut butter out of the jar with what they're working with. I was very much looking forward to season 2 because where they left off, I'm like, okay, now we're getting into the actual meat of the story. So like the way that I saw it was season 1 was like the kickstand on a very much bigger
Mm,
bike, and now
yeah,
season 2 is kind of like the wheels or the chain that gets it going, because now you
yeah.
get into what the beginning of the rings and more into the second age. So I'm very curious as to where they're going to stop it because there is only so much that they can do with the second age because there's only so much that happens. And if they're going to overlap and condense the timeline the way that they're doing it, it's like, all right, how thin are you going to spread these storylines?
There's so many questions, really.
So many questions.
Um, I went into season 1, for example, as an example, being like, hey, for the Sauron thing, I really wanted them to make it a character that we all kind of fell in love with and then revealed it to be the baddie. And I felt like Hal Brown was too obvious because there was something like,
Absolutely. Well, like even in the first episode when he meets Galadriel, he straight up quotes what Galadriel says in the Lord of the Rings, and it's just like him.
yeah,
I already know it. It's him. He's
yeah,
cute. He's got the curly short hair. He's rugged. He's hot. It's him.
right. And it was one of those things where I was like, no, they wouldn't. They wouldn't do that. And then it was like, all right, okay. And so
Yeah,
then there's stuff like I was, really rooting for like actual Blue Wizard stuff, and I don't think that that's where we're going. Like I think we're getting Gandalf and Saruman. Do you know what I
absolutely.
mean?
Yeah, especially after seeing like these first few episodes of season 2, just the way he's acting, it's like it's fucking Gandalf.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's stuff like where I was hoping that it would be more of a departure from what Peter Jackson gave us. But I get it. Like when we think about it, what do most who do most people have a connection with? They're going to try to build bridges wherever they can. So I think I'm more at peace with that idea now, and now I'm just kind of like, okay, what you gonna do with that? How are we gonna play with those ideas? And so for me going into Rings of Power season 2, I feel like I had a new fresh perspective on it, and I was really, because I had all my little personal baggage from season 1, but I was I was really like pleasantly surprised with the first 3 episodes that we've gotten. There were things that I was still kind of like, that's a choice. That is a choice that you are making. But I'm gonna flow with you on that one and see where we take it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's things like that, but I think for the most part, like, we're seeing these characters in new ways. We're obviously taking some things with the plot so that things move faster. Like, based on the trailers alone, like, I wouldn't be surprised if we're getting, I mean, like, Region is gonna have some problems.
Yeah.
I think we can confidently say that without ever even watching an episode. um and if so they're like, taking things to kind of speed up the plot and maybe giving it like a little bit darker um than it probably would be if we took the timeline as it maybe we would think it would be, or map it out differently. But I don't see that as like a issue. I think that it's just, for the tone and the story that they're telling, it makes it feel a little bit more exciting, even in certain aspects. The actors are all like bring 110%. I don't like I What's funny is that, so like, we know we have a lot of storylines, and I have seen different takes on those. I think it's, but there's a little bit of something for everybody. Like, no matter who you fall in love with, you're probably going to see them pretty soon within those first few episodes. I have honestly really fallen in love with the way that they're approaching Khazad-dûm and the dwarves. I think that's something that is really fresh and exciting that we haven't really gotten a lot of before. And like, a lot of the new characters I'm really intrigued by. I think Adar's a standout, either, no matter how you slice it. I think it's a really interesting take on orcs that we haven't seen before. Not just Adar, but like his whole like thing that he's got going on. Arondir can get it. There's all these things. I think that everyone is like really well cast, and it's for that reason. Like, I think Charlie Vickers is really like bringing it. Like, we're getting so much more of him,
Oh,
and I
yeah.
love it.
Even though I was like in the same camp as you, Andy, where it was like I like saw all the reasoning like of why it could be him, and I was like, no, that's too easy.
Yeah.
And I also really like this idea of like the anti-Aragorn kind of thing. But the second, it was like a moment of like, oh shit, that's happening. But then it's like, oh, he could play evil so well. Like, you knew it, like, just the second he started. And that, the first 3 episodes, seeing him act has been one of the joys. And then being able to, now that we're in on it, now that we know that he's Sauron and we can see him pulling the strings, that is the Sauron that we always kind of wanted to see. And that's been really cool. I really enjoyed that for the first 3 episodes that we saw.
Oh, yeah.
He could play evil.
He played so well.
Kaia's drooling, y'all.
Y'all should see my threads. I am a Sampa. Like, his wife, I hope she understands the kids that she has.
Yeah.
Could you imagine?
She's gotta know. Yeah,
Sure
it's crazy the way like he can like turn it on, or like
he can just go from innocent, like playing innocent, like good, to just flipping it and being like, wow,
the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like from like satisfied with the way things are going and then like angry.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he's able to flip that switch really well too. And then like composed,
yeah.
It's like,
and like seeing the way that he interacts with Celebrimbor, I think is really interesting, and I think that's going to be a highlight of the season. I think that relationship is going to be super interesting to watch. I think the dynamic between Elrond and Galadriel is one of those things that I'm also intrigued by.
It's definitely complicated.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, what old friendship isn't? I mean, it makes me think about like earlier this year, Josh and I went to see Merrily We Roll Along, and that's about like 3 really old friends that have been for like, and that's just human years, like 20 years, and just how weird those relationships can be. Like, you're always there for each other, but then you can be like really mad at each other at the same time, while still loving them deeply, and like that's kind of their vibe, you know?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
disagree, but also ride or die, but also like back off.
They're like siblings. They're like, gosh, Elrond,
Yeah, a little bit.
do it.
Yeah, stop.
Just go have a daughter. I guess Galadriel, go have a daughter already.
Go have a daughter already. Deep cuts.
We'll get there.
Yeah, surely. Right?
Uh-huh.
I don't know. Who knows? Who knows about all these significant others floating around?
Really, really big time jump there, but that's also kind of likely.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe that's what Celeborn's off doing. He's like, I'm raising our daughter, dummy.
Oh my god.
You're like fighting your little war.
Yeah.
Mommy's fighting her war.
Mummy's busy.
She's in her self-care era.
Yeah.
Self-care battle era.
She's in that baddie.
I know. I'm also super excited. Like, we've gotten some really sick costumes in just the first 3 episodes, and I know we're gonna get even more like hairstyles and stuff from just the trailers, and I really think that they have leveled it up. Like, the world feels more lived in this time around, and I'm sure there were like issues with like COVID and stuff, but I feel like we're seeing a lot more of everyday Middle Earth stuff.
Definitely. And I think the visuals have always been so good, but the first 3 episodes, that was another standout. There's visuals with Círdan that I was like, I want a painting of that.
Oh my gosh, yes.
You guys know what I'm talking about. I was like, I want a painting of that in my room, always.
Yeah.
There's really, really beautiful visuals.
Yeah, I think with the costumes, there are places that they really outdid themselves. Like that scene with Gil-galad and Galadriel and Elrond. Elrond's costume just so beautiful. But then
good.
When you see Anatar come in his first form in like that white, it kind of looked cheap to me. I'm not gonna lie, it did kind of look cheap to me.
I was wondering if that was on purpose, almost as like I'm a humble servant. Is that the one you're?
Yeah. Yeah, like when he first reveals himself as like Anatar, he comes in that white.
I'm a mess. Because he's just like, he's Anatar, the messenger, an envoy. Like, I didn't know if it was like kind of on purpose to be like a little bit humbling and not super grandiose.
Maybe. Well, I think from what I've seen with like in the trailers, they might be doing that thing that you do in theater, where when the person comes in and they say they're good, they start out in white, and then as it goes on, when they become evil, their costumes gradually get darker. Because you see in the trailer when Eregion is literally on fire.
Yeah.
And
true.
Anatar isn't.
I bet you're spot on.
So
yeah, I bet you're spot on with that. And we know they're already playing with color because of the Numenor color choices that happen as well.
Yep. Yeah, I think that is what I've seen mixed reviews on how people see the Numenor storyline so far, but I think that's weird because I really liked it. I
think it's a lot better than what they had in the book personally, because quite frankly, I don't want to see one cousin forcing the other cousin to marry them. I couldn't do it.
No, I think I think that they're taking that in a good direction. I think Pharazôn's super interesting character. The way he kind of lies, like what a political mastermind I feel like he is, and I think we're going to see a lot more of that. Muriel, always, forever.
Every line she spoke.
Yeah, just
her.
Yeah, just her.
Yeah,
that's it.
Like
that's my review.
She is that sparkle emoji, just her.
Yeah,
her and Disa. I love both of them.
Oh, facts. Yeah, I think that they are two of the best things about the show. And Arondir.
Oh, absolutely.
He's the elfiest elf to ever elf.
He's ever. Yeah, Disa is also such a standout, and
for sure.
She has more screen time, I think, in the past couple episodes that we just watched than, well, maybe not the whole entire first season, but like she's got a lot of screen time, and
she's stepping up.
Please give her every moment. Yeah, absolutely.
It's like even from the
with her,
first season, I loved her so much.
Yeah.
I know.
Like she's just that
That's what I'm
stereotypical
saying.
mom, wife, woman. She's what you want to be.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
She's like, you do this or I will.
Yeah, I think it's they have, to me, they have impressed me the most with kind of like their original stuff that isn't really anywhere. But the way that it builds connections with, those like canon storylines has been really fun to watch. And I think the way they have introduced these new characters has been really fun part of the series overall. I don't know what else I could say without getting too spoilery, but I think that if you did enjoy Rings of Power at all, or if you are interested in diving into Middle Earth in like a different way, I think Rings of Power is definitely a show to watch. Like it's something that I don't think a lot of us ever thought would happen. Like pitching a show about the Second Age. I mean, like a Lord of the Rings build, it like has a ton of connections to it, but for the simple matter of like we get bits and pieces for the Second Age, like
Mhm.
we have a lot more with the First Age, but Tolkien Estate is holding tight,
Mm.
tight
Oh
to that Silmarillion.
I ain't giving that up for a while.
Yeah, so shout out to Tolkien for including Second Age stuff in the appendices.
God bless him.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we would have.
He's like,
have
if
this.
you're not going to let me publish the Silmarillion,
Mhm.
then I will put this 100-page appendices. He's great.
I love him for it.
I'm doing God's
I feel
work.
like that's the reason that I even cared to read the Silmarillion in the first place, is because of that.
Right.
I'm like, oh, he
Incredibly
thought about
smart
all
decision.
Of this? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if they realized it at the time, but yeah, it was very, very smart to let him do that.
Yeah. I feel like publishing must have just been a totally different game.
Very different. Like this stuff would not happen nowadays. So many things would be. I mean, there's also like a lot of history with the war and paper shortage and all of that, and publishing was quite different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was about to say, like, everyone's publishing left and right now.
If he could have finalized a version,
that's what I'm saying. Like,
I think the publisher needed to push him because he'd be like, "Oh, really got to do this thing.
I got to do another edition. I messed up. I got a correction."
Which he did with The Hobbit, so
yeah, it happens. It's okay, baby.
I mean, it's what Christopher Tolkien did with the Unfinished Tales.
Right.
So, yeah.
Anything's possible. I think one thing that's really exciting about the show too is that they are working pretty closely with the Tolkien estate. So who knows, man? Maybe they're testing the waters with Second Age stuff, and maybe someday we'll get Ungoliant trying to eat Morgoth.
That'd be great.
That's all I want. Because every time I read that part, I'm like, girl, I'm rooting for you. I'm rooting for you.
That is me every time.
That little monster.
Like, yeah.
You're just
we
like,
were so close. We were so close. I mean, obviously, I don't know what, like, the Valar and the elves would do with a giant spider monster that has just eaten Morgoth, but
I get a giant flip flop, I guess.
Oh, a giant flip flop, giant sneaker.
They can figure it out, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
Who they didn't figure out, Morgoth. Long time to figure that problem out.
And they still fumbled the ball.
So we're just fumbling over here.
Too many chances.
Yeah. So I'm sure for the rest of the season, and they're just gonna release one at a time now, right?
Yeah, because they're boring.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, it's a lot all at once.
I wonder why they did do 3 and not just 2. Maybe because there are certain plot lines in the third one that are not in the first 2.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're like, we need those. We need to see these characters.
Let you know that they're still there. I don't know.
Yeah, it just was odd because, I mean, I'm one who I do like to stretch things out. So now I'm like, oh man, already 3. Already 3 are done, you know?
Is the plan to do 8?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh.
I-
See, it's hurtful.
It'll go by so quickly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm.
We're gonna be stuck like
So-
rewatching these episodes until
Yeah.
I know, is it going to be
Wow.
another 2 years?
I don't know. I almost clicked play again after watching all 3. I was like,
Mhm.
what if I just click play?
I
one
probably
more time?
will.
But I didn't. But
Oh, yeah,
I,
no.
yeah, I will.
That's actually what I did because I watched it and then I took notes
Yeah.
of all the stuff that I liked
Yeah.
and I didn't like, and then I watched through it again and I'm like, okay, this time it's for enjoyment.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was opposite. Yeah. It was
Where
like
you
watching
enjoyed and
just
then
for-
took notes.
Yeah. Well, I didn't rewatch, but when I was like,
Right.
okay, maybe I'll just take it all in. But it's really hard because you're like, what? Huh?
Yeah.
Or like, yeah.
Since I watched
maybe
the
you know really
first
better.
2 in the theater with Anna, which I also thought was really great because if you're listening and you haven't gone back to season 1, Anna is who kicked off Talking with Friends with me, and which was great because she, likes the movies but hasn't really thought about them much at all. And so then I was just there like either lore dumping or like getting her take as somebody that hasn't. So it was really interesting doing almost, it felt like we were doing that again a little bit yesterday and hearing the things that stood out to her or didn't make sense or, what she was trying to figure out.
Maybe first Tolkien.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, this goes so much further back in time than, it's like, I didn't make her read the appendices for Lord of the Rings. We only talked about it in relation to what they used in the PJ movies or didn't, So there's a lot of this stuff that, and like, the Order of the Rings, for example,
Yeah.
like, she didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Or...
Did she have any issue with it, or was she just like, yeah, this makes sense?
I think that she, she's a Game of Thrones girly, through and through, so I don't know if this, like, is as gnarly for her. Maybe it will be. Who knows what'll happen this season? This season on Rings of Power.
There's at least one thing that we all know is going to happen.
Yeah, she really loves, I remember when we were doing Lord of the Rings, she really loves the creepy stuff. I think there were some things with, like, the timeline that were a little hard to kind of wrap your brain around with what's happening. But then there were just some, like, character things that we talked about, like the way they're developing certain characters or the way that they went about the elvish rings this time around that we talked about a lot. So we definitely had fun, and yeah, I'll be interested to see what she thinks as we develop all of these storylines.
That's cool. And I think like the second season is going to like explain a lot of like what happened in the first season. Yeah, it already has. And it's going to be cool because I feel like they are working with the material a little bit more.
Yeah.
In this season.
It does feel like we're kind of getting back on I don't want to say that. I don't want to say that, but I do. Because they're obviously still doing their own thing in certain regards, but we're getting closer to, what fans may be more familiar with.
Yeah, they're kind of like bowling with the safety rails on.
Yeah.
Like the ball is going to stay in the lane, but it's going to go where it wants.
It's going to meander.
The only way I bowl, baby.
Yeah, amen. Yeah. I just imagine you bowling. I can't imagine you bowl. I feel like the last time I bowled was in high school.
Yeah. I'm not going to do it, sorry.
I don't know. I know that there are like cool fancy bowling alleys now, but when I think bowling alley I just think cigarettes and like beer.
And dirty carpets.
That's what it smells like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Sorry if anybody is a big fan of bowling. If you know of an amazing bowling alley, let us know. The cleanest, chillest bowling alley.
New shoes every time.
New shoes every time. They actually
it's like Lord of the Rings themed.
Yeah.
Oh my god, yeah.
It's like, whoa! Perfect.
Just get a little Gollum bowling ball with his face on it.
Yeah.
You know how they decorate the pin thing? It could be like an open
Yes.
mouth.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you could get the Smaug lane, we get the Glaurung lane,
With the
we get the
Balrog.
Watchers in
Did
the
we
Water
just-
lane.
Are we doing this?
I mean,
Did we just
we need investors.
Yeah, I was about to say. If anyone wants to start investing,
send us your money?
start the GoFundMe right now.
Yeah. If
Get that
you
LinkedIn page started.
if you have an itch to start a business, contact us today because we have.
Check out our Kickstarter.
Yeah.
We've got at least 3 ideas.
They're all fire, I promise.
Oh, great. Anyways, where's the power?
Meanwhile, but yeah, I mean, I think personally, I'm super excited about this season. I think that it's captured me in a different way than season 1, so I'm super excited to see where they go. And I think that's really the end of my spoiler-free thoughts.
Yeah, most of my thoughts are not spoiler free.
Right. So, I think with that, we'll call it a wrap for our vibe check. I think the vibes are good overall, and we're excited and we're having fun with it. Tune in next time and we'll be talking more in depth about the episodes. Now that we've kind of dipped our toes in the water for Rings of Power, and we're excited to keep the ball rolling and keep talking about this with you.
It can be a great time.
And also, don't forget to follow everybody where everybody is. Don't forget. I'm reminding you right now.
Yeah, put it on your calendar.
Yeah.
Get in your Google Reminders.
Get in your apps. I'm sure you're already on, Apple or Spotify or
Everyone has
wherever you
ADHD. Now we know you're multitasking.
Yeah. We know you're opening another app and reading while you're doing this. So just hop over to Instagram and TikTok real quick. But thanks again to Kelly and Kaia. This was really fun, and we can't wait to have you back.